Week 1 is officially in the books, and I already covered the Chiefs game in a separate video, so after this one, if you want to see my take on that, click the card above. But shout out to BetUS for sponsoring today's video, more on them later, but let's get right into it. So our first international game took place in Brazil this year, actually the first game to take place in Brazil ever, and pretty much our biggest takeaway from this game is that the field was absolutely terrible. Many players slipped. It even possibly caused Jordan Love to have his injury. The Packers overall, though, they looked great running the ball, but again are missing that key wide receiver to really take the top off of the defense, I believe. As we all saw, Jordan Love did get injured and looked way worse initially, but luckily just an MCL sprain, so he will be out more than likely at least 4 weeks. So Malik Willis will start for them now, and I mean, as long as they can stay afloat while Jordan Love is injured, their season shouldn't completely be ruined. But what do you guys think? Do you think it was a dirty play by Jalen Carter or not? Let me know in the comments. Personally, for me, I think he was just trying to make a play, and honestly, it was just a football play, and Jordan Love happened to get injured on it. As for the Eagles, everyone that's saying Jalen Hurts might be bad, it might be true, and yes, I know he wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Those interceptions he threw looked pretty bad, and at the beginning looked really bad, but he finally did settle down and had a great pass to Saquon. And speaking of Saquon, he himself had a big day in his first game as an Eagle, going for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns on 24 carries and 1 more through the air. It really does feel like Saquon finally has that supporting cast around him, and probably he feels the same and doesn't need to do everything, so I'm sure him and Eagles fans are excited to see what this offense can hopefully become this season. But now we possibly head to one of the ugliest games this week, taking place in New Orleans for Panthers Saints. And for my favorite team in the New Orleans Saints, they handled business, and Derek Carr looked like it was 2013 all over again and played like the great quarterback he used to be. And I mean, for someone who I honestly haven't been a fan of since they've signed him, and neither have most Saints fans, he proved everybody wrong, elevated his teammates, and really shut up the haters this weekend. As for the Panthers, the exact opposite can be said, and the haters are going to be speaking their minds nice and loudly. I mean, for the Panthers, there's not much to say, but they have to be better. I thought they were a bad football team, but I didn't think 47-10 bad. Bryce Young did not look great, going 13 of 30 and had really bad interceptions. And a lot of people expected Bryce Young to turn it around too after what Canales' track record has had with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield and turning those guys back into good quarterbacks. But I mean, this was just far from that. I know it is just one game, but I think if things don't improve, people will be calling for Bryce Young to be benched by the end of the season, if not sooner. But now we head to New York for Giants versus Vikings, and for the Vikings side, all I have to say is wow. Honestly, I was really impressed. The run game is much improved from what it was last year in Aaron Jones, and him going for 94 yards and a touchdown on 14 carries, it really impressed me, as well as just the entire offensive unit as a whole. As we all know, Brian Flores' defense became Minnesota's identity in 2023, and I mean, honestly, the unit will need to be the Vikings' rock this year if it's going to compete against a gauntlet over the next 6 weeks. I mean, the Vikings play the Niners, Texans, Packers, Jets, Lions, and Rams over their next stretch, so this defense is gonna have to play well if they want to survive that. As for Daniel Jones and the Giants, it seems that the more Jones is out there, the worse he looks. And if he's going to look as bad as he did on Sunday, similar to how he looked most of last year before his torn ACL, except for the 2 quarters of play, how can the Giants continue to justify putting this guy out there week after week? I mean, if we really think about it, it only took 2 losing performances by a Manning-led team for their franchise to seek a spark elsewhere. And while it right now seems obvious the Giants franchise quarterback is not on the roster if the Giants aspire to show team ownership, that the arrow is pointing in the right direction, the decision makers cannot be reluctant to pull the plug on a quarterback who did have one good season in 2022, but has yet to elevate those around him consistently. I mean, fans are absolutely pissed off with Daniel Jones, and I mean, how can we blame them? He was paid like a franchise quarterback, and honestly has far from shown that he is capable of that. I truly do think that it's between them and the Panthers for being the worst team in the NFL. Probably the Panthers are worse, but I mean, if things don't change, Daniel Jones may be on the chopping block as well. But now on to Cincinnati to talk Bengals Patriots, and I mean, for real Bengals? I mean, on the Patriots side, I'm shocked that they went into Cincinnati and pulled out this win. Their offense played far and away better than I could have even imagined on the backs of Ramondre Stevens, 120 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And I mean, look, what would this offense look like if they did put Drake May out there? Would they be better or the same? Because at this point, if they continue to play like this, then why not put the kid out there and see what he can do? Turnover ball is going to be the key with this team, and if they can do that, they may be in a lot more games than people think. As for the Bengals, I am completely speechless for all the wrong reasons. Like 224 yards of total offense was all you guys could muster up at home versus a bottom 5 team. And yes, Joe Burrow is 1-8 in weeks 1 and 2 in his career, and they do start slow, but for a Super Bowl caliber team, everyone expected them to be much more than what they showed us. Now down south to Atlanta for Steelers versus Falcons, and I mean, just Justin Fields did get the start, and this felt like a Justin Fields game where he couldn't find the end zone. But I mean, this was some Steeler football with a great defense and TJ Watt making plays and wreaking havoc all game long. As for Atlanta, I predicted them to win the NFC South, and hell, people even had them as sleepers to make a Super Bowl run possibly with all the talent they have. But honestly, it seems like it's a different quarterback, but the same lackluster offense from last year. I mean, the $180 million quarterback went for 155 yards and a touchdown and 2 interceptions. And I mean, that just isn't what you paid all that money for. Their games upcoming against the Eagles and Chiefs, I think, will be true tests to see how good this team really is and answer a lot of questions people have. Moving on over to Indy for the Texans versus Colts. And I mean, wow, this game lived up to the hype and more. This was one of the best games of the week. And starting on the Texans side, it looks like CJ Stroud is picking up right where he left off. And I think what makes this Texans team even scarier is they finally have a run game. Joe Mixon went for 159 yards on 30 attempts and a touchdown. And not to mention, they also got their other new weapon, Stephon Diggs, involved with 2 touchdowns, as well as Nico Collins proving he is the number 1 target on this team, even with an insane catch at the end of the game and going for over 100 yards on 6 receptions. Needless to say, this Texans team is going to be fun to watch this year. As for Indy, Anthony Richardson is a freak of nature. Everyone saw this throw and was by far the throw of the day, and so far probably the throw of the year. And I mean, if this kid can keep it up and develop more, because this is only his 17th start ever, I think he'll be fine. And I mean, if this defense can play even just a tad bit better than they did today, they should easily win 9+ games. Now back up north for Cardinals versus Bills. For the Cardinals, this was honestly just a tale of 2 halves. At one point, they were up 17-3 and just couldn't close the door. I mean, honestly, at one point too, I was even asking myself if the Cardinals are going to be legit threats in the NFC, and then everything came crashing down. I mean, the talk of this town was the missed throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. that would have put the Cardinals back in the lead, and on top of that, for him to only have 1 catch the entire game had a lot of people scratching their heads about the play calls. Going forward, I fully do expect Kyler Murray in this offense to click even more, so we're just gonna have to keep our eyes on that. For Buffalo, although it was ugly, a win is a win. Josh Allen spread the ball around to multiple receivers and put the team on his back. He did suffer a left hand injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that, but they play in the Thursday night game versus the Dolphins, which should be extremely exciting. Next, we head over to Chicago to talk about the first win in the Caleb Williams era. And straight up, Caleb did not play well, passing for less than 100 yards and really making some sloppy plays that he won't be able to get away with in the NFL now. But I mean, he didn't have any turnovers, which allowed this defense to help keep them in the game. I mean, 3 defensive touchdowns is just insane, and this defense looks elite. My main takeaway is that if this offense and Caleb can just play a little bit better, then this team could be scary with this defense. As for the Titans and Will Levis, well, this picture pretty much sums it up. Similar to Bryce Young, a lot of people were hoping Levis would be able to turn it around in his second season, and did the exact opposite. Like, I mean, to go up 17-0 and then give up 24 unanswered points and not even allow an offensive touchdown is just downright bad. And to make matters even worse, the interception that Will Levis did throw may be one of the worst ones you will ever see. Are you looking for a new book this football season? BetUS is the answer. They have the fastest and easiest payouts in the industry, along with 24/7 personalized service 365 days a year. Not only that, but they have live wagering on all major games, so if you see something mid-game and want to make a wager on it, you can. And the best part is you get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. And now look, you guys know I had to come through for you, so use my sign up link in the description or pinned comment and get a sign up bonus of 125% up to $2,000. Again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's video, but for now, let's hop back into it. To South Florida to discuss Jags at Dolphins, and first things first, Tyreek being arrested was a major talking point, and if you haven't seen the body cam footage, it is not good, and I'm happy that everyone is okay and happy to see Tyreek try to put a good spin on it, asking what if I wasn't Tyreek, but just I'm happy to see everyone's okay. And once the game did start, it didn't seem like it affected him, as he went for 130 yards and a touchdown on 7 receptions in this awesome celebration. It looks like the Dolphins picked up right where they left off last year and are as explosive as last year. For the Jags, next to Anthony Richardson's throw, this was by far and away the next closest one. I mean, this was just a beautiful ball. Brian Thomas Jr. looks super solid, and maybe taking over as the number 1 wide receiver over Kirk soon. I could totally see that happening. I think the main takeaway is, as it has always been, is what Trevor Lawrence is going to show up and play. If he can play like he did in the first half, then the Jags team should be good. If not, then they may collapse like last year. Heading over to Seattle for Bo Nix's first NFL start, and honestly, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, I know there was Jaden Daniels as well, but I think he did look the best personally. It wasn't anything crazy, and the stats may not show it, but he looked pretty good in his first game in Sean Payton's offense. Obviously, the biggest thing they're gonna face is just the cap, or I guess I should say non-existent cap room, because of the Russell Wilson deal deal this year and will continue to struggle till all that dead cap is gone. For Seattle, it was good to see them find that run game again in Kenneth Walker as he went for 103 yards and a touchdown on 20 carries. Somehow this Seattle offense gave up 2 safeties, and I don't know how that is possible, but if they can keep this run game going like this year, I fully expect them to be in the hunt for the NFC West title. Now back on over to the West Coast, Best Coast for Raiders Chargers, and the first game in the new look Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. And needless to say, they delivered on exactly what everyone thought they were going to do. They ran the ball efficiently and effectively, and it looks like these guys are really buying into the Harbaugh scheme and the culture change on defense. And if they can keep it up like this, then they may be able to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC West. For the Raiders, well, for me, it honestly just looks like they are a team caught in limbo, trying to not suck, but still sucking. And honestly, I fully expect Adams to get frustrated this season once they keep losing and be traded away before the end of the year. Now on over to Cleveland for Cowboys at Browns, and before this game, Dak agreed to a 4-year, $240 million contract, resetting the quarterback market. And I mean, the money must have helped because he went out and handled business offensively. Defensively, the Cowboys were absolutely flying around and making life hell for Watson, sacking him 6 times. And honestly, if the Cowboys can play this well, it might actually be their year. As for the Browns, I'm going to let Pardon My Take explain the Browns and Deshaun Watson right now.
Deshaun Watson's so bad at football now, I think you could say that he's a better person than football player.
I think
he's so bad at football.
I would say
he's a bad person.
I would say as good as he is at quarterback, even better human being.
Yeah, that's how bad he is at football now.
Yeah.
He's a better human than football player.
Yeah.
Because he's so bad at football.
That's a great spin zone.
Yeah. He's somehow reversed it.
It's close.
It is close.
It's
a race to the bottom.
It's week to week. Mincy asked if he can even show his face in Cleveland after this. I was like, I think that's the only part of his body he is allowed to show.
Correct.
Maybe not even the worst NFL contract ever. Maybe not even the worst sports contract ever. Deshaun Watson might have the worst contract ever.
We got to look it up. In Louisiana Purchase, I feel like we got that for like a couple nickels.
We fleeced.
Yeah.
We fleeced.
We got them.
Maybe White Star Cruise Lines.
Yeah.
To build the Titanic.
Yeah.
Pretty bad contract.
And then it's Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson, close second.
He has $230 million guaranteed. I actually think that Deshaun Watson is so bad at football now that he hates football that he's just going to pretend to be injured because he's like, what do I care?
Yes, you're exactly right. When he's playing, he hates being out on the field.
Yeah.
Can't stand being out on the field. He looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. He doesn't want to talk to anybody, doesn't want to talk to his teammates, doesn't want to talk to his coaches. He is looking forward to getting hit hard enough to make it convincing that he's hurt where he can't play.
He's going to have an elbow injury.
Down to Tampa Bay for Bucs versus Commanders, and for the Bucs, all I have to say is hello Mike Evans and hello Baker Mayfield. I mean, they looked great from start to finish. Baker played great, passing for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns, and without Canales, he looks to be just fine. Mike Evans, he looks like he's on track to have another 1,000-yard season, and honestly, looked great the entire game. For Washington, like I said earlier, I think next to Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels was the next best quarterback. They do need to size his helmet correctly if they are going to have him running this much, as it did pop off like 2 or 3 times, but I think for real, what he has at his disposal, he did look pretty good. Next year, if the Commanders can get some other weapons in free agency and continue the rebuild, then the Commanders could become a scary team. Now, to Detroit for the best game of the weekend, in my opinion, between the Rams and Lions. Starting with the Rams, this team is going to be a lot better than what most people think this year, and I think this game proved it. After losing future Hall of Famer Aaron Donald, this defense still looked fantastic against the Lions. I mean this when I say this too, that Matthew Stafford is maybe even a top 5 quarterback in the NFL when he's just on. I mean, this guy can make any throw from any angle and is just fun to watch. It did suck to see Puka Nacua carted off the field and put on the IR for the next 4 weeks with a knee injury, but future Hall of Famer Cooper Kupp was routing up the Lions defense and even had this insane toe tap catch. And I mean, once Puka is back in the mix, I really do think this Rams team is going to make a run this year. As for the Lions, it was the Jameson Williams show, and so happy to finally see this kid have his breakout game, going for 121 yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. As for overtime, that was just pure smash mouth Dan Campbell Detroit Lions football. They passed it one time to Gibbs, and then the rest of that drive ran the ball. Like, their O-line just dominated the Rams in overtime, and it wasn't even close as they just pounded the rock in overtime. By far and away, the Lions look like the best team in the NFC right now and look like the scariest team to play in the NFL as well. And now to the Bay Area for the final game of the week with the Jets and Niners. And honestly, this game for me, at least especially after the Lions game for how exciting that game was, would just seem so boring. Surprisingly, about an hour or two before the game, it was announced that CMC would be out with a calf strain, and now it looks like he may be even out the next week or two as well, but it truly didn't matter as Jordan Mason stepped in and had himself a night. Mason ran for 147 yards and a touchdown in place of the injured Christian McCaffrey, and the 49ers spoiled Rodgers' comeback with a 32-19 victory over the New York Jets on Monday night. Offensively, the Niners picked up right where they left off last year and had their way with the Jets defense with over 400 yards of total offense and almost 40 minutes of possession. As for the Jets, Allen Lazard had 2 touchdowns and Bryce Hall had a rushing touchdown, but the 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers didn't look crazy good tonight. I mean, he threw for 167 yards on 13 of 27 passing and an interception. My biggest takeaways, honestly, is for the Jets, Rodgers is healthy and showed plenty of spark despite a mediocre stat line, but the bigger problem might be the run game struggle. They had 68 yards rushing and they sorely missed the newly acquired pass rusher Hassan Reddick, who is still holding out. As for the Niners, an offseason full of bad vibes seemed to completely disappear. Brock Purdy was efficient, Christian McCaffrey didn't play, but really didn't matter as Jordan Mason did his best CMC impression with 147 rushing yards and a touchdown. This team obviously is the best challenger for the Lions until further notice. But as always, if you guys did enjoy this recap of week 1, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Again, it lets me know to keep doing these videos. I want to try to get one of these out every single week for you guys, as well as like, commenting, and subscribing does help out this channel much more than you know. So it truly does mean a lot to me. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.